Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about one of the most dramatic developments in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, the collapse of what many once called the Crimea corridor. This situation has changed rapidly, and the balance of power in the south of Ukraine looks very different from just a few months ago. The land corridor between Russia and Crimea was once one of Moscow's most valuable assets. It allowed Russian forces to move troops, ammunition, and supplies freely between the Russian mainland and the Crimean Peninsula. This route stretched through the occupied areas of southern Ukraine, linking Crimea to regions like Kherson and Zaporizhia. For Russia, it meant secure logistics. For Ukraine, it was a target that had to be destroyed if they were to reclaim the south. From the start, Ukrainian military strategy focused not only on direct battles, but also on cutting the supply lines that keep Russian operations alive. Without fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements, even the most heavily armed army becomes weak. Over time, this focus began to pay off. Ukrainian forces launched precision strikes, drone attacks, and sabotage operations aimed at the roads, bridges, and rail lines that make up Russia's so-called land bridge. The Kerch Bridge was the centerpiece of this corridor. It connected Crimea to the Russian mainland across the Kerch Strait, and its destruction became a symbolic goal for Ukraine. When explosions damaged the bridge in 2022, and again later, the psychological and strategic effect was enormous. Russia was forced to divert supplies through alternative routes that were longer, slower, and easier to target. What we're seeing now is that those routes are under severe strain. Ukrainian drones and missiles have hit supply depots, fuel storage sites, and command centers deep inside Crimea. Russia once believed that Crimea was untouchable, protected by air defenses and the Black Sea Fleet, but that illusion has shattered. Ukrainian attacks have reached almost every corner of the peninsula, making it impossible for Moscow to use it as a safe base. Reports show that the Russian Black Sea Fleet has been forced to move most of its ships away from Crimea to safer ports. That's a clear sign that the peninsula is no longer a secure fortress. Every time Ukraine hits a new target, it reminds Russia that even its rear positions are vulnerable. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. When soldiers and commanders realize that nowhere is safe, morale begins to collapse. The term Crimea corridor crumbles captures more than just physical damage. It describes a slow but steady erosion of control. A corridor is useful only if it functions as a reliable passage. When every bridge is under threat, every convoy risks destruction, and every depot could be bombed, the corridor stops working. Russia can still send supplies through, but not at the pace or volume needed to sustain large-scale warfare. As the pressure increases, Moscow has been forced to make tough choices. Does it send air defense systems to Crimea to protect key targets or keep them near the front lines? Does it risk moving supplies by sea, even though Ukrainian naval drones have sunk several vessels? Each decision reveals the strain on the Russian command structure. Every defensive move in the rear means fewer resources at the front. Ukraine's tactics rely on precision, timing, and patience. They don't need to storm every Russian trench to win this part of the war. They just need to make it impossible for Russia to maintain its logistics. Every truck destroyed, every bridge hit, every train delayed chips away at the enemy's endurance. Warfare is not just about territory. It's about time and resources. And time, at the moment, is working against Russia. The recent months have also shown how technology is reshaping the battlefield. Ukrainian drones have evolved from small reconnaissance tools into powerful offensive weapons capable of flying deep into Russian-held territory. These attacks have not only destroyed material targets, but also forced Russia to spend enormous amounts of money on defense measures, barges around bridges, radar systems, and constant surveillance. The cost of maintaining the corridor keeps rising while its effectiveness keeps falling. At the same time, Ukraine's allies have provided critical support. Western intelligence, satellite data, and advanced weapon systems like long-range missiles have allowed Ukraine to strike with increasing accuracy. This international cooperation has made it possible to hit targets far beyond the front line, deep into areas Russia once considered safe. The result is a new phase of warfare where distance no longer guarantees protection. For Russia, this creates a difficult situation. The collapse of the Crimea corridor doesn't necessarily mean immediate defeat, but it does mean the loss of strategic stability. Every army needs secure supply routes. Without them, even holding territory becomes unsustainable. Russian forces in southern Ukraine now rely on fragile logistics networks constantly at risk of being cut. That makes their entire position vulnerable. Inside Crimea, the atmosphere has changed. What was once a symbol of victory and pride is now a zone of tension and fear. Explosions, blackouts, and evacuations have become more frequent. Reports of military families leaving the peninsula show growing anxiety. Moscow can still claim control, but the reality on the ground tells another story. The peninsula has turned from a stronghold into a trap. From a strategic viewpoint, Ukraine has managed to turn geography against Russia. The same corridor that once helped Moscow advance is now working against it. Every kilometer of occupied land becomes another liability to defend. The longer the supply lines, the greater the risk of failure. By forcing Russia to defend everything, Ukraine ensures that its enemy cannot concentrate strength anywhere. The Black Sea has also become a contested zone. Russian ships once dominated the waters, threatening Ukraine's ports and trade routes. But as the fleet retreats and loses ships to Ukrainian naval drones, the balance shifts. Ukraine has even managed to reopen parts of its grain export routes, a significant economic victory that also undermines Russia's blockade strategy. The loss of naval control adds another layer of difficulty for Russia's defenses. Still, we must recognize that Russia remains a powerful military force. Its defenses are damaged, not destroyed. The corridor may be crumbling, but it's not completely gone. Moscow is trying to repair infrastructure, fortify key routes, and develop new supply lines through occupied areas of eastern Ukraine. The question is how long it can keep doing that under constant attack. War is often about endurance, and the side that can adapt faster usually prevails. Ukraine's approach is about forcing adaptation on Russia faster than it can respond. Every drone strike, every rail disruption, and every naval attack makes the Kremlin react. Over time, that reactive posture weakens any army. When you're constantly responding, you stop controlling events. This situation also has political consequences. Crimea was supposed to be one of Putin's greatest achievements. Losing control of it, or even appearing to lose control, would be a major blow to the image of strength the Kremlin tries to project. The more Ukraine shows it can strike Crimea, the more that narrative falls apart. Domestic criticism grows, morale drops, and international confidence in Russia's stability weakens. For Ukraine, this success also carries challenges. Maintaining pressure requires resources, intelligence, and constant coordination with allies. It also risks provoking harsher Russian retaliation, But so far, Ukraine's strategy has proven resilient. By keeping the focus on logistics, they can cause massive damage without necessarily engaging in large-scale offensives that cost heavy casualties. The world is watching this shift carefully. What happens in Crimea will influence the broader direction of the war. If Russia loses effective control over the corridor, it could be forced to withdraw from parts of southern Ukraine or scale back its operations. If it somehow restores the supply routes, the war could drag on. But the trend right now is clear. The pressure is increasing, and Russia's defenses are bending under the weight. Looking at the human side, the people of Crimea and the occupied territories are living through uncertainty. Infrastructure damage has disrupted water, power, and transportation. Many civilians fear what comes next, unsure whether to flee or stay. The war that once felt distant has reached their doorstep. For them, the collapse of the corridor is not just a military story. It's daily life being upended. As the fighting continues, Ukraine seems determined to maintain momentum. The combination of technological innovation, precise intelligence, and strategic patience is reshaping the battlefield. Each week brings reports of new strikes, new Russian losses, and new signs that Crimea's isolation is deepening. The peninsula, once a symbol of Russian dominance, now stands as evidence of overextension. When historians look back on this phase of the war, they might call it the beginning of the end for Russia's occupation of southern Ukraine. The physical corridor may still exist, but its strategic value is gone. Ukraine has transformed it from a lifeline into a weakness. What began as a bold move by Russia to secure its gains has turned into a costly struggle just to hold what it has. In modern warfare, control over logistics can decide the outcome more than sheer firepower. The side that can move supplies, maintain communication, and protect its infrastructure usually wins. By disrupting Russia's supply chain and making every delivery a risk, Ukraine is winning a war of attrition at the logistical level. So as we watch the situation unfold, it's clear that the Crimea corridor is no longer what it once was. The bridges, roads, and railways that connected Russia to Crimea are damaged, dangerous, and under constant attack. The defenses that once seemed strong are being overwhelmed not by a single blow, but by relentless pressure from every direction. This story is still developing, but the message is clear. Ukraine has shifted the war's dynamics by striking where it hurts most: supply and security. The Crimea corridor, once a symbol of Russian strength, is now a reminder of vulnerability. And as the world watches, the question remains: how much longer can Russia hold a corridor that no longer connects anything safely? Thank you for staying with us through this deep look into the changing face of the war. Make sure to stay tuned for more updates as this story continues to evolve.